Africa is the poorest continent on Earth. Moreover, the competition is not particularly close. Economic insecurity, political instability and corruption, civil wars, and terrorist insurrections have left millions of Africans living in abject poverty. Of the 27 countries worldwide currently ranked by World Bank as low-income economies, indicating they are the very poorest countries in the world, 23 are located in Africa. Africa also includes 21 of the world's 55 lower middle-income countries. The top 3 poorest countries in Africa are in East Africa, a region which continues to be held back by problems such as institutional weakness, corruption, poor infrastructure, insecurity, and a lack of human capital. The world's poorest countries are classified as low-income economies in the 4-tiered World Bank ranking system. This ranking is based on each country's gross domestic product per capita, which is a measure of a country's GDP divided by its population. The per capita GDP metric is a global measure for gauging the prosperity of nations and is used by economists, along with GDP, to analyze the prosperity of a country based on its economic growth. Top 10 poorest countries in Africa. This is the ranking of the poorest countries in Africa. 1. Burundi. Burundi is the poorest country in Africa and in the world, owing in part to its landlocked geography and an underdeveloped manufacturing sector. The economy is predominantly agricultural, accounting for over 50% of GDP in 2021 and employing more than 60% of the population. Approximately 70% of Burundi's population lives in poverty according to the World Food Program. Food insecurity levels are also alarming in Burundi country, with 52% of children under 5 stunted, and even higher levels of malnutrition among rural communities. In addition to poverty, Burundi suffers from corruption, weak infrastructure, poor access to health and education services, and hunger. 2. Somalia. Somalia is a country in the Horn of Africa that has an estimated population of around 15 million. The country has been described as Africa's most culturally homogeneous country. According to the IMF, the country's GDP per capita as of 2021 is around $438.30. About 43% of the population lives on less than $1 a day, with around 24% of those found in urban areas and 54% living in rural areas. Somalia is also the hungriest country in Africa. Somalia's poverty rate is currently 73%, making it the second poorest country in Africa. Its main sources of income comes from foreign aid, remittances, and the informal sector. 3. Mozambique. The East African country of Mozambique is endowed with rich and extensive natural resources. The country's economy is based largely on agriculture and raw minerals. Since 2001, Mozambique's annual average GDP growth has been among the world's highest. However, the country is still one of the most underdeveloped and poorest country in Africa, ranking low in GDP per capita, human development, measures of inequality, and average life expectancy. 4. Madagascar. The Republic of Madagascar is an island country in the Indian Ocean. The main economic resources of Madagascar are tourism, textiles, agriculture, and mining. With a GDP estimated at US $13 billion and a per capita GDP of $471.50, Madagascar is the 4th poorest country in Africa. Approximately 69% of the population lives below the national poverty line threshold of $1 per day. The country ranks 4th in the world in terms of chronic malnutrition. Nearly 1 in 2 children under the age of 5 is stunted. 5. Central African Republic. The Central African Republic is a landlocked country in Central Africa. Despite its significant mineral deposits and other resources, such as uranium reserves, crude oil, gold, diamonds, cobalt, lumber, and hydropower, as well as significant quantities of arable land, the Central African Republic is among the poorest countries in the Africa, with the 5th lowest GDP per capita in Africa. As of 2019, according to the Human Development Index, the country had the 2nd lowest level of human development, ranking 188 out of 189 countries. The mineral-rich nation's poverty is complicated by a near-decade-long civil war which has devastated much of the country. 6. Sierra Leone. The economy of Sierra Leone is that of a least developed country with a gross domestic product of approximately US $4.6 billion in 2020 and a GDP per capita of $509.40, making the country the 6th poorest country in Africa. Sierra Leone's economic development has always been hampered by an overdependence on mineral exploitation. Successive governments and the population as a whole have always believed diamonds and gold to be sufficient generators of foreign currency earnings and lure for investment. As a result, large-scale agriculture of commodity products, industrial development, and sustainable investments have been neglected by governments. 7. Congo Dem. Rep. Located in Central Africa, the Democratic Republic of the Congo is the 2nd largest country in Africa and the 11th largest in the world. with a population of around 108 million. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is also the most populous francophone country in the world. The Democratic Republic of Congo is widely considered one of the world's richest countries in terms of natural resources. Its untapped deposits of raw minerals are estimated to be worth in excess of US $24 trillion. Despite such vast mineral wealth, the economy of the Democratic Republic of the Congo has declined drastically since the mid-1980s. Congolese citizens are among the poorest people on earth. Dr. Congo consistently has the lowest, or nearly the lowest, nominal GDP per capita in the world. The DRC is also one of the 20 lowest ranked countries on the Corruption Perception Index. The nation has also suffered from political instability, a lack of infrastructure, corruption, and centuries of both commercial and colonial extraction and exploitation with little widespread development. 8. Niger. Niger is a landlocked country in West Africa named after the Niger River. Niger is one of the least developed countries in the world. It consistently ranks near the bottom in the United Nations Human Development Index and also one of the poorest countries in Africa. Niger's economy is concentrated around subsistence agriculture, with some export agriculture in the more fertile south and export of raw materials, especially uranium ore. Niger faces serious challenges to development due to its landlocked position, desert terrain, inefficient agriculture, high fertility rates without birth control and resulting overpopulation, the poor educational level and poverty of its people, lack of infrastructure, poor healthcare, and environmental degradation. 9. Eritrea. With a GDP estimated at US $12 billion and a per capita GDP of $569, the northeastern country of Eritrea is the 9th poorest country in Africa. The main economic resources of Eritrea is agriculture. 70% of the Eritrean workforce is employed in agriculture, accounting for roughly 1/3 of the economy. Eritrea's main agricultural products include sorghum, millet, barley, wheat, legumes, vegetables, fruits, cattle, sheep, goats, and camels. 10. Liberia. Despite being the first African republic to proclaim its independence and Africa's first and oldest modern republic, Liberia is still one of Africa's poorest countries, with over 70% of the population living on less than $25 a day. As at 2021, the country's GDP per capita stood at US $632.90, the 10th lowest in Africa. The Liberian economy began a steady decline due to economic mismanagement after the 1980 coup. This decline was accelerated by the outbreak of civil war in 1989. GDP was reduced by an estimated 90% between 1989 and 1995, one of the fastest declines in modern history. Historically, the Liberian economy has depended heavily on foreign aid, foreign direct investment, and exports of natural resources such as iron ore, rubber, and timber.